Welcome to the WalterFootball.com podcast. This is episode 328. We're going to review the 2021 NFL Draft. We're joined once again by Jacob Camenker from the Sporting News. Jacob, how are you? And congratulations on your great mock draft.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm doing pretty well. The draft was very kind to me. We hit on the J.C. Horn first defender taken bet. We had bet that, I believe, when it was 8.5 to 1 odds, maybe 9 to 1 odds. I had two separate bets on it. So I was very happy about that. I started off 8 for 8, and then the night got a little bit crazy. But thanks to you and Charlie, you guys helped provide some information, and we always logic our way through it. So I'm glad my mock came out good, but I really owe a lot to you guys. So I'm glad to be back talking about the draft.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, draft night tends to get a little crazy as it progresses. Our special guest today, Charlie Campbell, our senior NFL draft analyst at WalterFootball.com. Charlie, congratulations as well on a terrific mock draft. And how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Yeah, it was a fun draft. Fun draft season, a little odd and strange, but really happy that we could provide really good, accurate content and projection for our readers. That's always what I strive for and hope to do. And so really happy that we were able to do that this year and in recent years collectively.
Yeah, Charlie, your information was once again terrific. Completely on point, and I always say that you're the best in the business, so I'm glad to have you on to review the NFL draft. And I figure that we can talk about the first round. We spent a lot of time on the first two picks already in advance. We knew what they were, so we're not going to break that down. But we're going to break down the rest of the first round into clusters and talk about which picks we like the most and which picks we like the least. Before we begin, please hit subscribe, the like button, comment below. All that would be amazing. Or share this video with someone who likes football who may not know about the site. So let's begin with the first 5 picks after the first 2. So the 49ers, there's a lot of speculation that they were going to take Mac Jones. They ended up with Trey Lance. And then the Falcons, they drafted Kyle Pitts. The Bengals went with Jamar Chase over Penei Sewell. The Dolphins went with Jalen Waddle over Penei Sewell. And then the Lions finally snatched up Penei Sewell, and they had a fun time celebrating in their draft room. I imagine they didn't think that he was going to drop to them. So let's go, Jacob, then Charlie. How do you feel about the first 5 picks? Which team did the best? Which team did the worst?
I think the one that did the best is the Lions, because Penei Sewell could legitimately be the best non-quarterback in this draft class. We could debate him or Kyle Pitts all day, but I thought that those were the top 2 guys, non-quarterbacks in this draft class. And they got him all the way at 7 because, Atlanta wanted a tight end, Miami and Cincinnati apparently both wanted receivers more because it was a deep tackle class, which, is fine. I'm happy with the talent they got, but Dan Campbell is trying to set up a system there, and he's looking for big-time football players, and Penei Sewell is going to be one. He will lock down either the right or left side of that line, depending on where they want to play Taylor Decker. I just think that was an A-plus move for them, not having to move up and getting one of the draft's top players. So I loved that pick for them. I was less wild about the Bengals taking Jamar Chase, not because of him as a player. He's arguably the most talented receiver in this class. But we've talked about this at length, that they need blocking, and I feel like throughout the whole draft, they didn't do quite enough to address the position. They got Jackson Carman, which I like. They got Trey Hill at center, which I think is good. But I still feel like they had a franchise left tackle on the board in Sewell, and they passed up on him for a receiver that will, probably be their number 1, but they already had T. Higgins in the fold. They already had Tyler Boyd in the fold. So did they really need him? You can put a lot of different receivers with Joe Burrow and they will find success. You can't do the same with linemen. So I think player-wise, you're getting a great player in Chase, but fit-wise, I would have been more content to wait on a receiver than them. Overall, though, I thought the first 5 picks after the 2 quarterbacks, they shook out as I thought they would, so I'm not going to complain too much about them. Charlie, I'll throw it to you now with your thoughts on the first 5 picks there.
Yeah, I thought that in the first 5, I thought the Falcons really had great value getting the top non-QB, across the league with the 4th overall pick. Because typically when you're picking 4th overall, that's just, you're not getting the best player in the draft, a non-quarterback. Typically that guy's off the board. So I think the Falcons really benefited there. I think Kyle Pitts, if he stays healthy, has the potential to be a really special player. I hate to say future Hall of Famer, but I think he could be amazing. So and I think just for their roster, he's going to be so valuable in terms of a receiving tight end, but he can also be an X receiver, a Z receiver, slot receiver. He's going to be such a weapon in the red zone, which they've had issues with at different times. And I think he's going to help invigorate the career of Julio Jones if he stays there. And Calvin Ridley is going to benefit from him. The ground game will benefit from him. And I think the Atlanta organization with a new coaching staff and front office really set a great tone, because everybody raves about Pitts as a worker and a guy who loves football and is really intelligent. So I think bringing that presence as your first draft pick really sets a tone there for them to move forward in a positive way. And I agree with you, Jacob, that of the top of those five after the quarterback, the Chase pick to me was the one that I think was kind of the most doubtable of them. I guess the most you could second guess, because, like you said, the offensive line is still a big problem. Chase is a really good prospect, but at the same time, he's still 6'1", 200. He's not a 6'4", 6'5", like AJ Green, Julio Jones type guy. And so when you're passing up on offensive line talent, and receivers are deep every year, we have one great receiving class after another. They could have drawn on that in day two as well. So I think value-wise, in the long term, you may have kind of downgraded in taking Chase over Sewell, but really, these are all really good players, and I really like the Sewell pick. It was hard to go with Pitts over that, because I think with Detroit, they're laying a foundation. It's a big rebuild. They inherited a terrible roster. So before you start putting the walls up on a house, you pour concrete on the ground. And I think that's what this kind of draft was for Detroit, just laying that foundation on the offensive and defensive line with what they did in the first 2 days. And I think that was really smart by Brad Holmes, their general manager.
Yeah, I completely agree with you guys. The Pitts selection is going to make Atlanta a lot better. The Penei Sewell to the Lions, I think that was probably the best pick. And then, yeah, I think the Bengals should have gone with Sewell. And I think the Dolphins should have gone with Sewell as well. Tua is not that far removed from that devastating injury that he had, and I think you have to protect him. And just you could see what great offensive lines can do for a young quarterback. In 2019, everyone thought the Browns are going to win the Super Bowl. They were like 8-1 or 9-1 to win the Super Bowl, and they didn't even make the playoffs because their offensive line was so bad. And then last year, they finally addressed their offensive line. Baker, as a young quarterback, now he has protection, and they get to the second round of the playoffs and almost beat the Chiefs. So I think it's so important to build up the offensive line. Let's give a shout out to the 49ers as well, because they didn't draft Mac Jones. They went with Trey Lance. I thought that was the better decision. Just so much more upside. I don't think you can trade up all the way for Mac Jones. And as it turns out, they could have gotten Mac Jones to 12 if they wanted to, because he fell to 15. So it was the right choice after all. So let's move on to the next group of five. So the Panthers and the Broncos both went cornerback, J.C. Horn and Patrick Surtain, respectively. The Eagles traded up for Devontae Smith over the Giants, and then the Giants traded down so the Bears could move up for Justin Fields, and then the Cowboys, who moved down from 10 to 12, took Micah Parsons. So how would you guys grade these five picks, Jacob and Charlie?
Yeah, this was another section where I thought most of the picks were pretty good. We'll get to the one I don't like after the one that I like the most. That's the Justin Fields pick. Chicago, we talked about this a lot. You can't go into the season with Andy Dalton as your starting quarterback and Nick Foles as his competition. They were going to have to add a quarterback at some point. In my final mock, I had them drafting Mac Jones. Like, they might have had to trade up to get him, was my thought process, but the other four were going to be off the board by the time that they would be able to trade up. But once the Broncos passed on Fields because of the Aaron Rodgers rumors, I think that the Bears knew when to pounce. They made their move and they got their guy. And, Fields, in my opinion, was the second best quarterback in this class. So getting him at the 11th pick could end up being a massive steal. Like, maybe his upside isn't as big as Wilson or Lance, but I think he has a lot more polish. So I thought that was a great move by the Bears there. We'll see how he pans out, but I'm actually excited about the Bears now, which last year they were horrific to watch on offense. So nice to be excited there. I hated the Micah Parsons pick. And for a couple of reasons. First of all, I didn't think that linebacker was a massive pressing need for Dallas. I thought they would address it on day 2 or maybe early day 3, which they did. They got Jabril Cox later on. I get it. Leighton Vander Esch, they declined his 5th-year option. He hasn't stayed healthy. Sean Lee had retired, and their defense was bad. But I thought they could have upgraded one of the cornerback spots earlier than they did. I thought that they could have gone a number of different directions. They could have gotten Kwity Paye. They could have traded down more to pick up more assets. Parsons is just, he's a big character concern for me. There are maturity concerns. There are some pretty disturbing hazing allegations. And I know the Cowboys historically just haven't cared about that stuff, but I don't know. There's just something that I didn't like the value on Parsons. We had talked about him going late teens because of these character concerns surrounding him. I just thought it was a little early. I thought they should have tried to move down again or, tried to do something. I'm not going to kill them for it entirely because he has talent and they did trade down a little bit. But yeah, that was not my favorite pick. I will say one more thing. Patrick Surtain to the Broncos. Great player, but I was very surprised they passed on a quarterback, even amid the Aaron Rodgers rumors. So take that for what it's worth, but that was one of the more interesting picks of the draft to me.
Yeah, I'm in lockstep with you there on these ones. For Chicago, I think it's just such a boon to get Justin Fields. I mean, if you would have told us a week ago that picking at 20, that the Bears end up with Justin Fields, we would all have had our jaws on the floor. We just would not have believed it. And they are able to do it and give up only one first rounder, whereas the 49ers had to give up 2 to go up for Trey Lance. So I think that this is a great deal for the Bears. It's just incumbent on them to develop him well. And who knows if it'll be Nagy and Pace or some new guys next year. But at any rate, I think that was a great pick for the Bears. Great move. I agree on Micah Parsons. I just think that for Dallas, when you're right there, like you said, they missed out on the corners. But you look at the Jets who moved up. They went to 14 from 23. So you probably could have moved with the Jets, because I'm sure the Jets would have loved to get in front of the Chargers, because they would, for Vera Tucker, Rashawn Slater, those guys are, right there, that if they get in front of the Chargers at 13, they get their preference of the 2. So for Dallas, with this linebacker draft, you could have moved down into, pick 23, got more assets, and ended up getting, a linebacker there, potentially Parsons or Jamin Davis. With Parsons continue to slide, there's Owosu Kamara, as you hit on. They got Cox in the mid round. So I think Dallas could have done more. I'm not Parsons as a player. I just don't see great instincts. He was not a tackling machine. He was a clean air guy, not a physical guy to take on blocks. I think what he does best is rush off the edge as like a 3-4 edge rusher. They don't play a 3-4 in Dan Quinn's system. So I don't know. I'm skeptical of that pick. And their linebacker picks haven't exactly blown it away. I mean, Vander Esch was flunked medically by some teams, and then he's continued to not have good health in the NFL. Jalen Smith really struggled last year. I talked with some team people, and there was talk that he might be available, but the pro scouts who looked at him said the tape was bad, and they just weren't interested. So from last season. So I think the evaluation could be a little bit off there for the Cowboys with Parsons. But in Denver, I think that even if they're going for Rodgers, they made a mistake passing on Fields. Fields would have been a valuable commodity, even if in case that deal doesn't go through, you have him. But if, let's say you get Rodgers, you could just turn around and trade Fields for a first-round pick. He wouldn't have lost his value over the summer months to come here. So I think that for the Broncos, it's very risky to bank on getting that deal later on, and maybe it doesn't happen, and you end up with Bridgewater and Drew Lock, which I don't think is a good situation to be in if you're Vic Fangio and trying to make it another year.
Yeah, you know what? When they took Patrick Surtain, I thought the Broncos were drafting him for Green Bay. I thought maybe they would use him as a trade piece for the Packers because the Packers needed a corner. Right. And then I thought maybe Green Bay would go receiver at the end of the first round. But then Green Bay went with a corner as well. So maybe Green Bay is going to want Jerry Jeudy or something in that trade. I agree with you. I think Justin Fields would have been the best pick. Although I do understand why the Broncos pass on him because they think they're going to trade for Aaron Rodgers, which leads me to the best pick. Obviously, Justin Fields. The Bears finally found their franchise quarterback. And how dumb are the Packers really? Because not only have they alienated Aaron Rodgers and they're going to trade away one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, they allowed the Bears to get a quarterback because Denver would have taken Fields if it wasn't for this Rodgers nonsense. So the Bears were able to finally land the franchise quarterback because of Green Bay's incompetence. So it's just so bad on Green Bay's part. I don't know what they're doing over there. But yeah, it's not going to end well. I also like the Devontae Smith trade for the Eagles. They moved back from 6 to 12 initially. And I thought at 6, Devontae Smith was going to be their target. So they picked up an extra first round pick for Devontae Smith. And, they gave up a mid-round pick to move up to 10, which they had to do because it sounded like the Giants are going to take Smith. I think both those moves are great. I'm going to be with you guys with the Micah Parsons. I think Parsons is an unbelievable talent, like physical talent. The problem is he a good fit for Dallas? Not sure. And also, can he stay clean off the field? Like that's a major concern. It does, they did need a linebacker though. I think with Leighton Vander Esch's health concerns. If Leighton Vander Esch didn't have those issues, then no, I don't think they would need a linebacker. But Charlie, that was something you reported ahead of Leighton Vander Esch's draft. Some people gave you flack for it, and undeservedly so. We've seen Leighton Vander Esch have those neck issues that one team flunked him for. For positionally, I think it makes sense. And maybe best overall physical talent, it makes sense. But I just don't really like the fit, and I'm worried about Parsons off the field stuff. So let's move on to the next group of 5. So we entered the offensive line portion of the draft. The Chargers took Rashawn Slater. Then the Jets moved up for Elijah Vera Tucker. The Patriots drafted Mac Jones. The Cardinals selected Zaven Collins, and then the Raiders apparently shocked everyone except for us when they drafted Alex Leatherwood. I couldn't believe it, by the way. Everyone's like, "Oh, Leatherwood, where does this come from?" And I'm like, "We've had Leatherwood here for a while, so I don't know." So Jacob, then Charlie, what do you think about these picks?
Yeah, you guys nailed the Leatherwood pick. You'd had that there for a while, and I was like, yeah, I can see it. He's the type of lineman that Gruden likes, and everyone just could not believe that he was a first round pick, let alone top 20. But it always, to me, at least when mocking the draft and watching him on tape, it always seemed like, hey, this guy's probably going to be a top 25 pick, worst case scenario, late first, because I feel like he went under the radar in a good tackle class because he had a lot of experience. He played multiple positions, and he had high-level experience for Alabama in the SEC, blocking for a championship team. So I don't know what everyone was thinking, saying, I can't believe he's going 17. I think they just didn't properly evaluate him there. So that's my thought on Leatherwood. Mac Jones to the Patriots. I did not think they were going to go with Mac Jones. I love this, actually. I'm a big Mac Jones guy. I think he's going to be a solid NFL quarterback. He does not have the ceiling of the other prospects, but what he does have is the ability to read the field, to throw accurately, to work well within the pocket. I think Josh McDaniels will be able to get the most out of him, will be able to build a system for him to work within. In some ways, he could probably run the similar system to what Tom Brady ran when he was here. I would imagine they'll gravitate back towards that. He'll have to beat Cam Newton for the starting job first. Bill Belichick doesn't just hand jobs to rookies ever, let alone at the quarterback position. So we'll see how he performs. I know there's some concerns about his mobility, but I don't think that's a problem behind the Patriots offensive line, which is very good. And they added a little bit of depth there up front. I think they're fine if Isaiah Wynn stays healthy. We'll see how he does with the receiving core. I don't think he meshes well with Nelson Aguilar, which is the one thing I'm like, why didn't they get a receiver that has, a better skill set to fit with him, like a possession guy or a big time route runner? Like, I think Jacoby Myers will do well with him. But I think at the end of the day, Mac Jones is going to fit that Patriots team well. If he can learn how to throw the ball downfield more, that doesn't necessarily mean make his arm stronger. It's just throw downfield with more accuracy and continue to use elite ball placement to get the ball to his playmakers. I think he'll have a chance. We'll see in time if it works out, but I thought since the Patriots didn't move up to get him, it ended up being a really good value for them, because a lot of people in New England were like, oh, why aren't they moving up to get one of Fields or Jones? And it was like, well, apparently they knew one would fall to them and they played the game right. So props to the Patriots for not moving up to get a quarterback, but actually addressing the position. So we'll see what Mac Jones does, but I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the Leatherwood pick I thought was fine, and I knew other teams that we heard from people with the Jets that he was in play for them at pick 23 if they weren't able to move up for Vera Tucker. That Leatherwood was a top candidate for that pick. So I think just the big media slept on him and where teams really valued him, and it's hard to know where they value every player in the draft. It is for me. It is for everybody. So I think that, Leatherwood was a good value there for the Raiders, and the criticism is kind of off base. Now, as far as I really like the Vera Tucker pick. It kind of reminds me of Tristan Wirfs to Tampa Bay a year ago, where they already have a solid left tackle. So you have a really talented player that's going to be put in a position to thrive, because I think Vera Tucker, whether he's playing guard or right tackle, that's going to be a really good fit for them. And with Becton at left tackle, he's, that kind of shores up the issue of whether arm length and size is going to be a problem for Vera Tucker in the NFL, because he's not going to be at that critical spot where it might be. And that leads me to the pick I disliked the most, which was Rashawn Slater to the Chargers. Now, let me ask you guys this. Would you guys say Isaiah Wynn is a good NFL left tackle?
It's your account, Jake.
This is a tough question. I think he's good when he's on the field, but he hasn't been healthy. But his size can be an issue at times. Now, I don't know if that's related to like injuries, if he's not quick enough to keep up with people, but I guess the point would be if you have a smaller tackle and they get hurt, they're not always going to be effective. So
yeah, I'd say so
he's fine.
That's kind of the mixed feelings I have about Slater. It's Isaiah Wynn, Calvin Beachum are kind of the comparison for NFL left tackles that are about roughly 6'3", 300 pounds. So that's not we're not talking Joe Thomas and Jonathan Ogden here, So and the Chargers don't need him to be a Hall of Famer or anything, but I do think that 6'3", 300 with 33-inch arms could be a problem. And I know some teams that looked at him as a late 1 or early 2 because they just were projecting him to guard or right tackle, just given the size. Obviously, the Chargers think he can play left tackle, but to me, I think that's a little risky. I could see length giving him issues. We'll see how he does when he goes up against some of the better edge rushers in the league. Fortunately, in his divisional matchups, it might not be as big of an issue. The Raiders are trying to figure out endlessly. We'll see, the Chiefs, how they would go after him with Frank Clark or not. But yeah, I just think that pick has the potential to not work out as a left tackle, in which case if you're taking a guard there or right tackle, that's okay if he's really good, but they're putting him at left tackle. So I think that one kind of has some real risk to it. And Mac Jones, I never am going to bet against Bill Belichick with a quarterback. So I wasn't a huge fan, but going to New England, the way they find just consistent ability to put players in position to succeed, I'm not going to bet against him panning out and turning into a solid starter for New England.
Well, I guess I'm betting against it. I don't like the pick at all. I don't know. I called him an Andy Dalton with DUIs, and
Yeah.
Charlie, you spoke to some team that had a mid-round grade on him and compared him to Matt Barkley. Like that terrifies me. The deep accuracy is a concern. The arm strength is just not there. Like, I mean, I think he can be an okay starter. I think that's his ceiling. Like just being like an average starter, where like Andy Dalton was an average starter for a while with the Bengals when they had that all-star roster. The problem was that they didn't win in the playoffs because of Andy Dalton. And I think that might be the case with the Patriots, where, Mac Jones might be able to get them into the playoffs if, Belichick continues to be the best coach in the NFL, which I don't see why he wouldn't. And they have great talent around him. But once they get to the playoffs, I just don't think he's going to be good enough to lead them to a Super Bowl. So, with the first round pick, I think you need a quarterback to do that. And if they got Mac Jones in the second round, I'd be all for it. But in the first round, I just don't like it. I really wonder where Mac Jones would have fallen if the Patriots wouldn't have taken him, because there were a bunch of teams that didn't need quarterback after that. Like maybe the Steelers 24, like maybe they would have taken him. I don't know. I don't think the Redskins would have, and the Bears already traded up. So there just wasn't a demand for him. Maybe the Patriots could move back and gotten Mac Jones. I wonder about that. But to what you said, Jacob, about them not moving up, I think that was good. Like at least they didn't do that. So that's that. There's not like much to love in these 5 picks. Like nothing is like great to me. I think Zaven Collins to the Cardinals is probably my favorite, because I think he's such a good fit for what they need to do. They need to stop Russell Wilson. I think Zaven Collins can help do that in multiple regards. And that division's so tough. Like the 49ers, Rams, Seahawks, like they all have like so much talent on offense that the Cardinals really needed to help in the middle of the field. And that's been a problem for them for a while. So I like the fit there. I don't think it's like an A+ grade or anything, but I think it was a solid move. All right, the next 5 picks. So the Dolphins, with their second pick in the first round, they took Jalen Phillips. The Redskins drafted Jamin Davis. The Giants, after trading down, they drafted receiver Kadarius Toney. The Colts picked Kwity Paye. And then the Titans drafted Caleb Farley. So what do you guys think about these 5 picks?
I was a fan of how Kwity Paye made it to the Colts. I think they're going to be able to turn his athleticism into legitimate production at the NFL level. He's a high character guy too. Like I think his mother immigrated to this country from Liberia, and he grew up in Rhode Island, in the Rhode Island projects, and he's turned himself into a terrific player, and he's just a stand-up guy off the field. So I think he'll fit in really well for the Colts. I think he's a hard worker, so hopefully things pan out for him there. I think for Washington, their pick of Jamin Davis, I think it was interesting because a lot of people were like, oh, why not Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, before we knew he was going to slip late into the second round because he had some sort of heart issue there. But I think Davis fills a big need for them. They have a pretty high-level defense there, but they needed some help at the linebacker spot. Davis is a crazy good athlete. And I think if Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio are willing to trust him, I think that they're going to be able to turn him into a really good pro player. So I kind of liked that one. That one was a little bit under the radar coming into the draft. I think people slept a little bit on Davis. We heard some rumblings that he could go in the late teens, but I think because of the general nature of linebackers falling and Owusu-Koramoah, are his issues being unknown, led him to be undermocked, but I still think they got a good pick there that should fit their system well. So I think those 2 defensive picks were the ones that I liked the most. The Caleb Farley one to the Titans is a very interesting wild card, but we've seen them pay off with injured players in the past in Jeffrey Simmons. So will they be able to do it again? I don't know, but I'm interested to see how that shakes out.
Yeah, in this group, my favorite pick was probably Jalen Phillips to the Dolphins. I think he just has a great skill set, great upside, was really excellent last year for Miami. And I think if he'd gone back to Miami and had another big season, he would have been a top 10 pick next year. But he slid because teams had some concerns about the makeup and depression issues from when he was at UCLA. and how he kind of handled those depression issues. But he was able to, put it all behind him in Miami. So he's staying local, keeps the same kind of support system that he had, and to get straightened out and to turn into a hell of a football player last season. So I like that pick a lot for Miami, and getting the top edge rusher in a draft class at 18 is, really nice value for them. And then the Kadarius Toney pick, I mean, I love it in terms of getting the Bears first rounder and moving down, because that's just that in very good chance it's going to be top 20. And then also you have the possibility that it maybe, goes top 10. So, I definitely think that is a steal. The one I love Toney when he's on the field. The thing that just scares me is just the injuries. Same thing with Caleb Farley. Both of these guys are super talented, but they're just risky in the first round. Toney has got banged up a lot at Florida before the senior year. Then the senior year, he kind of put it all together. And Farley, as we know, had major injury issues throughout his time at Virginia Tech. So those ones I think have that risk factor of these guys won't be able to stay healthy in the NFL.
Yeah, I graded everything here a B or a B minus, so it's like it's kind of tough to say what's the best and what's the worst. Start beginning with the worst, and I obviously don't hate any of these picks because they're all B minuses, but I was a little surprised that Jalen Phillips, Caleb Farley, and Kadarius Toney all went earlier than we anticipated because of the injuries concerns. And the Jalen Phillips is a phenomenal player. Like, if he stays healthy, the Dolphins are getting a steal at 18. But what happens if he suffers a concussion or two? Like, is he going to be out? Like, how long is he going to be out? Like, that really worries me for a first round pick. And typically we see these injury concerned players fall, and Jawan Taylor fell out of the first round because of injury concerns. So I was kind of shocked that they went so early. So yeah, that would worry me. I guess by default, I would say Kwity Paye was my favorite pick, because if the Colts get Carson Wentz to play like he did before 2020, they're going to be one of the better teams in the conference. And that means they're going to match up with the Chiefs or the Bills in the playoffs. And how do you beat those teams? You have to pressure the quarterback, and to get Kwity Paye, who's a terrific talent on the edge, and you can probably move inside as well in passing downs. I think having that on the roster is going to be huge against Mahomes and Josh Allen. So I guess by default, that's my favorite pick. But like I said, I didn't really love anything here. So the next five, we have the Vikings, after trading down, they drafted Christian Darrisaw, tackle. The Steelers, as a lot of people speculated this, Najee Harris. The Jaguars drafted Travis Etienne, the next running back. The Browns drafted Greg Newsome, and then the Ravens selected Rashad Bateman. So what do you guys think about these picks?
I think these are very polarizing. I feel like I have really good feelings about some and really bad about the others. I think the best one is Christian Darrisaw. He could have easily gone in the top 15. I don't think anyone would have been surprised if that happened. I had him penciled into the Patriots in my final mock, more because I couldn't find a place to put him than anything else, and I didn't know what the Patriots were going to do. But the Vikings, their number one need was a left tackle, and they got Christian Darrisaw, who has the athletic upside to be a very, very good starting tackle. And it was revealed later in the process that he had been dealing with injuries at Virginia Tech. One of the questions about him was his unwillingness to finish plays on tape. But if he was dealing with an injury, then that would explain maybe why he would pull up sooner. Maybe he was just trying to protect himself from getting more hurt, or, God forbid, going out for the rest of the season or something. So I thought that pick looks excellent on paper, and really filled a big need. The one that I really like, I like the player. I hate where he ended up, is Travis Etienne. They did not need a running back, Jacksonville. They have James Robinson, who's an undrafted rookie last year, came onto the scene and played really, really well. Now, I know Etienne brings a different skill set, great pass catcher, really explosive. He had something like 78 touchdowns at Clemson in 4 years, which is just absolutely insane. And he's familiar with Trevor Lawrence, which is a plus too. So they'll have chemistry out of the backfield immediately, but they already have a lot of receiving weapons. And I feel like Travis Etienne, is he going to be your 3-down back? And if so, what are you going to do with James Robinson? Like, you can have depth at running back, but you did not need to spend a first-round pick on a guy like Etienne when you had other roster holes to fill. So I wasn't wild about that one for the Jaguars. Again, like the player, don't like the fit. So that's my take on those 5 there.
Yeah, I hear you that this group is all kind of mixed feelings on the pick. I like probably the most I probably like is probably Greg Newsome to the Browns. I think giving them another really good corner, and with what they added on the defensive line, their defense is going to be much better next season. And I think with Denzel Ward already there, drawing the number 1, Newsome could be a really good number 2 for you. The question with him is just staying healthy, but I think if he is able to do that, he's going to be a really good football player. And I think he's pretty safe just for them. Just the injury issues, the only thing that I think would kind of potentially derail him from having a good pro career. The ETN pick, I hear you. The Jags, I think, had a missed opportunity in terms of what they could have done for the long-term offensive line for Trevor Lawrence. This pick and at 33, there was a lot of really good O-linemen available. And, when you think of the interior of their lines all approaching free agency, Cam Robinson's franchise, but he's really not an elite left tackle, and everybody knows it. So I think that kind of hurts. But I do like the ETN pick in part because I loved him as a player. I love what he does in the passing game. I love how he can turn that 3rd down check down into a 1st down, which I think is really great for a young quarterback. And I do like bringing him in terms of the kind of hidden things that you don't see in terms of Trevor Lawrence just having someone that he's friends with, that he's known a long time. He's coming into a really high-pressure situation that he's going to have to win over the locker room. Sometimes locker rooms that can be skeptical of the Golden Boy franchise savior. And I think having ETN there will help him. I know of high players who wanted to quit after 1 year because they were homesick, and it's just a lot more difficult in the NFL than they anticipated. So I think having ETN will be good in that regard for helping Trevor Lawrence to make the transition. But positional value and the rest of the roster, I'm not that big a fan. And similar with the Steelers, I think the offensive line, I think in some ways you may have had a better draft if you went offensive line and then running back. But we'll see. I do think improving the running game was an absolute necessity, but I think it may have been better off. And you think of the long term, you take an offensive tackle there, he might give you 10, 12 years. A running back's not going to give you 10, 12 years, so he's probably going to give you a good 5 to 8 if he's really good, and then you're getting a replacement because you wore him out. So longevity, I think the offensive line would have made more sense than taking a running back at those picks.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think both running back picks were kind of disastrous. I think I like both players. Like nothing against Najee Harris and Travis Etienne. I just think that going running back in the 1st round has been a proven losing strategy over the years. I published a study of the past 10 years of teams that drafted running backs in the 1st round, and every single instance it could have been better. Even talking about Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, Ezekiel Elliott, all those guys who are terrific players, but all the teams that drafted them, they could have done better doing something else. And it just goes to show that you can find running backs later in the draft. For example, the Ezekiel Elliott stuff, like the Cowboys could have drafted DeForest Buckner and then drafted Derrick Henry in the 2nd round. So like you can find these guys later on. Running back is so easy. It's such a replaceable position. And these guys get injured more than any other position, basically. And it's like, look at Todd Gurley. I mean, he was an amazing player 1 year, and then he has arthritis in his knee, and now his career is over, even though he's not even 30 yet. So I just have a huge issue with these teams taking running backs in the first round. 20 years ago, it would have been a viable strategy because the NFL wasn't so pass happy, but things have changed, and I think that these teams are kind of slow to adapt to it. And it's Jacksonville, especially. Like I think you made a good point, Charlie, that giving a teammate to Lawrence is a good thing. So like that's definitely a positive aspect to this. But they had James Robinson. It's like did Urban Meyer watch tape of the team last year? Like James Robinson was one of the only good players on the team. So I just don't understand it. I didn't like the Rashad Bateman pick either. Can he separate? This reminds me of the N'Keal Harry pick a couple years ago from the Patriots. I don't like it at all. And then the other picks I liked a lot, like Christian Darrisaw. The Vikings traded down and got him. I thought that was huge. And then Greg Newsome with the Browns to help that secondary against Patrick Mahomes is going to be pretty clutch. So let's get to the last 5 picks of the first round. The Saints, kind of a surprise pick with Peyton Turner. The Packers, as we discussed earlier, they drafted cornerback Eric Stokes. The Buffalo Bills drafted Gregory Rousseau. The Ravens, with their second pick, took Jason away. And then the Buccaneers closed out the first round with Joe Tryon. So what do you guys think about these picks?
I want to say one thing about the Rashad Bateman pick. That one really annoyed me because I had that mocked in my final mock at that pick at like noon on Thursday. And then I was like, oh, shoot, I got to get Kadarius Toney in the first round. And
no.
I made the move. I blame Elijah Moore for this. I had him too early. Yeah. Anyway, on to the last 5 here. I was a fan of the Bills landing Greg Rousseau. I know that he fell because his tape wasn't overly impressive, but you can't teach height. He has height and length, and he was productive in his last year at Miami. Maybe he should have gone back and played one more year to see what he could have become with that extra year of development. But I trust Sean McDermott to get the most out of him. They needed some help at the edge rush position, so I feel like that was a solid value. They didn't overdraft him. Like if he had gone in the top 20, I wouldn't have been happy about it. But now they've got a chance with Rousseau, and if it doesn't pan out, then it doesn't pan out. I think they drafted Boogie Basham in the second round, so I'm pretty sure they did that. So they have another option on the edge as well. So I like that move from the Bills. I liked the Jason Owe pick. He actually wants to be called Odafe Owe now. That's apparently his actual first name. Breaking news here, in case you didn't hear that amid all the draft coverage. But yeah, so I like Owe, another super athletic guy. For him, the production wasn't there. In some ways, he's almost the opposite of Rousseau in that he looked excellent on tape and flashed really good skills, but the production didn't back it up. Again, with the Ravens coaching staff, I think they're going to find a way to unlock his potential, figure out where to play him. So I like both of those picks. I wasn't as wild about the Peyton Turner one. Charlie, I know you had information or you had reported that he was rising in the lead up to the draft. I still did not expect him to go in the first round, but I thought generally speaking, the teams picking late in the first round did a good job of adding players with upside, which I think is one of the big things to do to get that 5th-year option. So I think most of these picks I was okay with. The Turner one I have some questions about, but I will turn that over to you, Charlie, and see if you have any thoughts on it.
Yeah, of these 5, my favorite was Stokes to Green Bay in terms of the player. I think of these 5, he's the best football player, and I think that he has a lot of upside, size, and speed in terms of what he's going to be able to do for them is really becoming the number 2 corner to go with Jair Alexander, who's excellent. So you assume they're going to give a big money contract to Alexander, and now you have a cheap, really good, high upside skill set guy on a 5-year deal to kind of help balance out the books there. So you're not spending big money on 2 veterans at the position and a premium position. So I like that value there. Peyton Turner, yeah, we heard that he was rising into teams thought he would go in the second round. So going 28th overall was still a surprise to me. I didn't think he'd sneak into Thursday night, but I did think he could go early on Friday night, potentially potentially, but I'm not a big fan of the pick because to me, it feels like Marcus Davenport 2.0 because Marcus Davenport at San Antonio beat up on a lot of bad competition. And he looked like high schooler playing middle school players in some games. And that's the same thing with Peyton Turner. You look at the Tulane game last year, and that poor kid just got destroyed by him. But it wasn't fair. And that's part of he's big, he's strong, he's got some speed, but he has some stiffness and a lot of same issues that Davenport has had in terms of getting off blocks with bigger offensive tackles in the NFL. So I feel like the Saints didn't learn from that mistake and just kind of took another similar player and really didn't diversify. I think Jason Owe would have been a better pick for them because he would have at least brought something different to the end group than Davenport and Cam Jordan and replacing Trey Hendrickson, who, that's a lot of production they lost from last season in terms of sack production and pressure on the quarterback. So I really thought that was of this group, the worst pick and really one of the worst of the first round. But otherwise, I think the Ravens, Bucks picks were fine. I wasn't a fan of Rousseau, but I think going to the Bills is a great landing spot for them because I think they do a great job of coaching up guys and developing talent there in Buffalo. So even though I'm sure he was disappointed he slid, he ended up in a great situation.
Yeah, he'll have a chance to rush the quarterback with a lead in most games, so you can't ask for more from an edge rusher. My speaking of edge rushers, my two favorite picks here are Jason Owe to the Ravens and Joe Tryon to the Buccaneers. I just think they have so much upside, as Jacob, you were talking about getting the fifth-year option with these upside players. I think it's huge, and like the Ravens needed a pass rusher now. The Buccaneers need one in a year or two when Jason Pierre-Paul moves on, and even to give Pierre-Paul a breather from time to time, so you can have Tryon play 20-ish snaps per game this year and then become a full-time player next year. I love both those picks. I'm right there with you about the Saints. Peyton Turner, I had him in the second round after Charlie, you reported that he would be moving up. I still thought, this is too early. And I get the feeling that the Saints kind of panicked because I think they wanted Greg Newsome. And I heard that they were even trying to trade off for Greg Newsome. And then he came off the board 2 picks earlier to the Browns. And then the Saints kind of were caught with their pants down. Kind of reminds me of the Texans a few years ago when they wanted Andre Dillard, and then he was off the board, so they panicked and they reached for a second day prospect. So I think that's what happened with the Saints, and it's not ideal. I think that I think they reached a little bit here, and I didn't like that at all. So that's a wrap up for the first round, but we have some comments and questions. Bryce says, shout out to Charlie, 8 of 8 with his first 8 picks. The man was on fire. Both of you guys are on fire. Both of you guys went 8 of 8. Not me. I went 6 from 8. So I didn't have that flame emoji that you see on DraftKings. Not a snowflake, but I didn't have the flame, unfortunately. Patrick says, well, I think you crushed on Parsons a bit too hard. He's going to make the Cowboys much better with Sean Lee's retirement. I think this is more about Leighton Vander Esch kind of entering his 5th year, and they didn't pick up his option because of the injuries. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think it's more about Leighton Vander Esch as well. I think it gives if Vander Esch plays really well this year, maybe they extend him. But if he gets hurt again, then they'll just let him go. So Parsons would be the option there too. And then the other thing I'll say to it, I know teams play a lot of 3 linebacker sets in the 4-3 defense, but you're seeing it become increasingly popular to play nickel packages, 5 defensive backs, 2 linebackers at times. So it's kind of I don't know. I feel like they could get by without 3 potential stud linebackers is what they appear to be looking for. But, Dan Quinn's defense in Atlanta got by for a while with just Deion Jones and Devondre Campbell as the top 2 guys there. And I know his defense was bad at the end, but early on in the Dan Quinn era, it panned out. So, I think it's more of a replacement for Vander Esch, though, than anything else.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's Vander Esch or Jalen Smith. I think they'll just see how those 2 guys play this year, and one of them will probably be out, and then it's Parsons and the guy who plays well enough to stick. So I think that was probably the thought process there. But yeah, I mean, definitely. Even as any player coming from college to the NFL is going to have a learning curve, even if it's the can't miss guy like Trevor Lawrence. There's things that just aren't done at the college level that are done in the NFL. So I think Parsons initially, I would if I were running the Cowboys, I would rush him a lot on third in that nickel package, because like Jacob said, you're playing nickel 70% of your snaps now in the NFL, maybe more in some games depending on who you're playing against. So with that, you really aren't playing three linebacker sets very much. So to get good value out of that pick, I think you're going to have to rush him more off the edge, because he's still as great an athlete as he is, as fast as he is. He still hasn't covered NFL receivers and tight ends, and Van Der Esch and Jalen Smith have more experience doing that. So they're probably going to get that assignment more so than he is early on. But I think there's some dangers in that pick, and danger in the way the Cowboys are evaluating these linebackers.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't a fan of the pick. We talked about it earlier, but yeah, like I said, I think this is more about Van Der Esch, but I think it's going to be a good idea to rush him on third down. So we'll see if the Cowboys can figure that out. I don't have the best, I don't have the most faith in their coaching staff. Let's just say that. Coach Paul says Philly screws the Giants again. Karma is coming for the Pigeons. I didn't realize this was a thing where Philly was screwing the Giants. I don't know, but I think you should blame the Cowboys more than anything, because the Cowboys facilitated that trade. If that didn't happen, the Giants would have gotten Devontae Smith, but the Cowboys allowed that to happen. Dallas basically allowed which team to pick Devontae Smith. They basically handed Devontae Smith to the Eagles rather than the Giants, which I think was a smart move, because the Eagles aren't going to be competitive for a while. Yeah.
The Phillies screwing the Giants was the Nate Sudfeld game. They lost that one on purpose. Right. If they had won it, then Washington wouldn't have made the playoffs. Would have been the Giants. I think that's what Coach Paul's referring to.
How could I forget that? I lost so much potential money on that game, because I had 18-1 on the Giants to win the division, and because of Nate Sudfeld, it didn't end up happening. So
yeah, I think I remember on the podcast telling you, like, I don't think the Eagles are going to try it, and you were like, yeah, they might not, but it's the Aurora Snowball effect. The guy, like, Washington has to win, and then the game was just mostly awful because Alex Smith was playing. Like, bless him for trying, but he just did not have it that game. His leg was not healthy. And, they won, but that was a rough game to end the ceiling on.
It was a rough game for multiple reasons, not just the 18-1 on the Giants. That if the Eagles would have covered, I would have been, I think, in 5th or 6th place in the Super Contest, instead of tied for 7th. So that game really messed me up. Nate Sudfeld. So yeah, I can't believe I forgot about that. So yeah, I'm angry at the Eagles now. So I agree with you, Coach. All right, do you guys think there's a chance Rodgers plays for the Packers next year? What do you think?
I won't rule anything out. I know ESPN's Rob Domofsky, who's a pretty good Packers reporter. He said today that there was like a 5% chance that it happened. So I think at this point, if they've burned the bridge that badly, they're either going to have to give Rodgers a long extension and move on from Jordan Love, or they're going to have to trade Rodgers for a big package, which at this point, like, if you've burned the bridge already, you might as well trade him for what you can get, which will be a lot if a team like Denver needs him. So I would lean on the side of I think there is a chance, but I don't think it's a very good one.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's slim, but it's possible, and I think it might take, in some ways, ownership getting involved and saying we're going to pay him and we're going to move on from Jordan Love, and Goody, you're lucky you have this job. And so, I think that something like that could maybe fix it up, but it just seems slim. And I think as time goes by, without that happening, it just leads more and more towards him leaving and going and being traded.
Yeah, I wonder though, like, who's making that decision?
Right.
Gutekunst is messing this up, but like, who's going to make that change? Like, I just don't know.
Yeah, I guess it'd be Murphy, the team president, who's talking with the other largest shareholders. The Packers are so unique, being this team, that doesn't have, kind of point person as owner of the franchise. It's tough to project, but you would have to think that a lot of those people who do have the most shares are pretty, PO'd about this one, and the way the whole organization's handled it. So I'd love to be a fly on the wall at those meetings and hear what they're talking about.
I have one share in the Packers. I wonder if I could get in on these meetings to see what's happening.
That'd be awesome. Definitely share that with us. I think he's going to Denver. I already bet Denver to win the Super Bowl at 30-1. I think that's a great number. It's a bookmaker. I think it's still there. It was there a couple of days ago. Not sure, but check it out if it is. I think that's a great number. Kind of mirrors what Jacob did last year with the Buccaneers before they got Tom Brady.
Fun fact, I bet the Broncos at 50-1 immediately when the Broncos rumors were announced. So could history repeat itself? I hope so.
That is incredible. I was too preoccupied with the draft to even think about that. And it finally hit me, I think on Sunday, where I'm like, wait, I should bet this. And then it was 30-1. I'm like, that's pretty good.
I should have been preoccupied, I'll be honest, but then that popped into my head and I was like, because my first thought was actually, did I bet them to win the Super Bowl? And I hadn't, and then I looked and they were 50-1. I'm like, well, I have to take them now because what if they do get Rodgers?
That's amazing. It'd be incredible if you got 50-1 on 2 years in a row that teams winning the Super Bowl.
If that happens, I'm gonna have a massive party. It's gonna be ridiculous.
That's awesome. Yeah, definitely do that. That'd be incredible. All right. Bryce asks, he says my NFL comp for away is Javon Curse. Identical measurables, similar collegiate production. Am I out of line?
No, I don't think so, because Curse was a freak. I mean, that was the nickname of the freak. And supposedly he was running 4.4s coming out of Florida. That's before our time collectively, but that's the legend around him. And obviously he was a bolt of lightning across the edge. I think Curse had a little bit better college tape and more production, but from a skill set perspective, I think that comp is dead on, because Owe ran 4.4s at the Penn State Pro Day, and he can be on the cover of Muscle Fitness anytime he wants, and he can lift a ton in the weight room. And Curse was known as a workout freak as well. So I think that from a skill set perspective, that's a great comp. Well done there, Bryce.
I would agree with everything that Charlie said. I think that's a great comp.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's pretty good. I like that a lot. His upside's through the roof. I think there's no questioning that. Speaking of upside, what is Bateman's ceiling and floor? I don't know about ceiling, but we know I mentioned the floor with N'Keal Harry. Ceiling, I have to think about that. But I'm not saying like he's definitely going to be a bust, but I really worry about his ability to separate from defensive backs.
Yeah, I think N'Keal Harry's definitely the floor. I'm going to have to think about that as well. That's a good question. Like, in my head, it's always like, guys that don't separate really well, Alshon Jeffrey, but he's not tall enough to be Alshon Jeffrey, so I don't think that's a good one. But it's that Alshon Jeffrey type, at least, like big possession receiver, contested catch type.
Yeah, maybe kind of Mohamed Sanu-ish in some ways. And, I think Sanu had good games in part because of AJ Green, and then in Atlanta he had Julio Jones, and they were going on all cylinders there, and Kyle Shanahan and Matt Ryan. So I think that's kind of the ceiling, and I agree with the floor being kind of a Harry or a Josh Doxson, Laquan Treadwell kind of guy if he doesn't pan out.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Sanu is definitely a name, and it maybe like a shorter Alshon Jeffrey. I like those suggestions. Last questions. Do you guys think that the Bills have trade value on their defensive line? There are currently 9 defensive ends on the roster. The first guy that popped in my head was AJ Epinesa. Maybe they could trade him because they drafted him in the second round last year, but now that they have 2 new defensive linemen, maybe they can move him. So I think that's a possibility.
Yeah, I think they could possibly kick him inside to tackle too. Maybe if their 2 rookies show out well, they could try to trade one of Jerry Hughes or Mario Addison. But I think they'd probably rather keep as many pass rushers as they can.
Yeah, I think it would really be Hughes or Addison, maybe training camp, preseason time, if they're thinking of cutting one of those veterans, and they maybe look to deal them to a team that maybe had some injuries and needs an experienced pass rusher to come in. But I think the part of the hidden thing there was with Dayo Odeyingbo, their second round pick from Vanderbilt. A lot of teams felt he was going to grow into being a defensive tackle, full-time defensive tackle in the NFL, and 3 techniques. So he's 6'6", 280 right now, and he played at Vandy. And last year they had a COVID thing go through their locker room, and some of the players had issues with weight and working out. And I know that from my own experience with COVID, that it does kind of linger in the weight room even after you feel better. So definitely, I think Odeyingbo is going to grow into a defensive tackle, so they could have this young front with Epinesa, Odeyingbo, Ed Oliver, and Gregory Rousseau, kind of being the sub-package guys there. So because you don't have a nose tackle in that group. So, but I think that if they that makes sense to me, that if the rookies are coming along and they feel good about him, they feel Epinesa's made some strides going into his second year, that maybe they kind of dangle out Addison or Hughes and come training camp, end of cut time, all that range.
Okay, makes sense. So yeah, that's about it. Thanks everyone for watching. Please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video. All that would help us out a lot. Really would. So do you guys have anything to plug, Jacob and Charlie?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Camenker. I'll be sharing my work there and my draft thoughts every now and then. I'll also be sharing my work from Sporting News there, so keep an eye out for that. And you can check me out at sportingnews.com, covering all sports that you can think of there. Obviously, emphasis still on the NFL for me, though. So you'll see random things about DK Metcalf trying to, make it to the Olympics all of a sudden. So fun stuff like that. So yeah, check it out and follow Sporting News on Twitter as well. And yeah, let's just keep enjoying this. We're in the football off season, but I'm going to start prepping for the 2022 draft soon. So I'll be sure to have some thoughts on that eventually.
Yeah, and so coming up here, we have our Why Slide and Why Undrafted series. So everyone out there, if you want to email me suggestions at draftcampbell@gmail.com, I'll ask around and try and get you some answers on why certain guys slid or went undrafted. And then coming up in the summer, I have the rookie forecasts that go up with Walt's season previews. So we kind of get more in depth on each team's draft class. And that kind of wraps up the 2021 draft for us. So that's a lot of focus here in May. Then at the end of May, typically National Football Scouting, which is kind of the scouting service that NFL teams use, and they all collectively have their advanced scouts look ahead. Those guys were looking at 2022 players this spring, potentially going to spring games and spring practice. I don't know about COVID and whatnot, what access they had. But at any rate, they put together their preseason watch list. So that happens at the end of May. They typically have a convention somewhere like Miami or Fort Lauderdale or someplace with warm weather. And then that's out circulated with teams. And so we build our position rankings based off that watch list in the preseason. So I hit those rankings hard come June, and we'll just hit prospect previews all summer, and of course Walt's season previews, which are just phenomenal reads. I love them. Look forward to them. Such a great job on those. So we just keep it rolling all year. There'll be tons of interesting and great stuff going up on the site. So excited for what the summer has to yield.
Yeah, tons of content for sure every single day. I love the Why the Slide series plus Why Undrafted. It's so interesting to see why these guys fell when we expected them to go higher. So we have the first one on the site today, and then we're going to keep adding them. So definitely check that out. The plan for my content is after a couple of updates on the post draft stuff, we're going to move to fantasy rankings. The schedule comes out in 8 days, I believe. So we're going to talk about the week 1 lines. Jacob and I will be back on a later show to talk about that, plus season over under win totals and an update to our Super Bowl props. And so once that's done, we're going to move on to the season previews. As Charlie mentioned, I love writing up the season previews. It's so much fun. And I think I have an idea of which teams I'm going to have in the Super Bowl. So we'll see if anything changes. Obviously the Aaron Rodgers news might change things a bit. So that is great talking draft with you guys. Once again, congratulations on your excellent mock drafts. It was really cool to see both you guys do extremely well. So that is it for our post draft wrap up, and I will talk to you guys later.
All right. Talk to you guys later.
All right. Bye.